Hello, everybody. I'm Jonathan from Boredom Sated.
And I'm Boris from Boredom Sated.
Today, we're going to start talking about the Pathfinder 2 preview characters. We want to talk first about the Gunslinger.
Yes, Wild Wild West.
So, the Gunslinger is a martial character because of the way they work. They get a D8 hit points plus con. Their main key attribute is dexterity. Now, the idea here is that these are rare character classes, so they're kind of strong. At least they feel like they're a little strong, especially considering with the way their saving throws and the way their attacks go. Like, they are one of the only classes that start expert in some weapons. Only fighter other than this starts as an expert in their weapons. But the Gunslinger starts as an expert in simple firearms, crossbows, martial firearms, and martial crossbows.
Right. I think because of that, I would feel very comfortable in saying it's a subclass of the fighter. More than... Yeah.
So, the way the Gunslinger works is... First of all, they're the only character class that gets proficiency with firearms right now because the firearms are being put in this book. We're going to go over some of the firearms that are available and how this is generally going to work, and we're going to talk about the viability of firearms in general in another video. But for right now, we're going to go over a couple of the things. So, as an example, the Gunslinger will end up being... I think an expert in will saves and a master in both reflex and fortitude, but their expert in will saves is better than everyone else's because they get an ability called stubborn. The way stubborn works is whenever you fail but not critically fail a will save against an effect that would give you the controlled condition, you can attempt a new save against that effect at the start of your next turn. So you're stubborn, you are harder to control. It's an interesting plan.
Yes. I guess it's just to make up that they don't end up with a legendary in any one of their saves, unlike every other class that has at least one legendary.
Most classes don't. Most classes end up with a legendary, but because of the fact that they end up with a legendary attack,
right,
that's what it makes up for. But like as an example, fighters don't get a legendary save either. Everyone gets a legendary, not a multiple legendaries, and that's one thing that they've tried to keep consistent. Right. So obviously at that point we will say that at level 5 they are going to get Gunslinger Weapon Mastery, which basically means they become a master in simple and martial firearms and crossbows, and they gain advanced firearms and crossbows which don't exist yet. And that goes up to expert, and all of their other weapons also go up to expert. And for firearms, they get the critical specialization. Moving on from there, they become legendary in gunslinging, which at level 13, which is the reason why we say it's similar to fighter, because basically fighter gets a weapon group legendary at 13. The weapon group for gunslinger is firearms and crossbows, specifically in simple and martial. They become master in advanced firearms, and they also become master in one additional weapon group, such as bombs or swords. So the funny thing is, and I just realized this, you are better as throwing bombs as a gunslinger than you ever are at the character that makes them in an alchemist.
Yes, which makes no sense.
Victory! So the other main thing that we have to talk about with gunslingers is... two other things, really. One, they only ever get master with their saving throws, their DCs, which is kind of interesting. They do get, I believe they do get legendary in perception.
Perception.
Yes. Yeah, at 19 they get legendary perception. At level 7 they get master perception. So they do get that second legendary, which is pretty strong. And the other thing that we have to go over is the ways of the gunslinger. Do you want to talk about the ways of the gunslinger?
Sure. There are 3 ways. There's the drifter, which I think they were going for the Wild West type of story with that. The Pistolero, which I think is more, which is more in line with sort of a dueling, swashbuckling type of individual, and then the sniper, which speaks for itself. Now, each one of these gets deeds. You get 3 deeds. You get the initial, the advanced, and a greater deed, and I think they're all really good for the ways. They do give you significant bonuses for each one. So because of the way, I mean, we can go over them, but I really, preference, I like sniper, but that's a preference. But from playability and strength-wise, I think it's pretty much equal across all 3.
I think it really depends on what you want to do. Personally, for the deeds, I don't particularly care about any of them for power-wise. However, for my personal play style, I would definitely have gone with the Pistolero.
Yep.
Pistolero, we're talking about generally a dual-wielding character, either dual-wielding pistols or pistol and sword or pistol and dagger, that kind of thing.
Right. But again, it's just some preference. I don't see a significant drift in power based on the deeds.
So one thing we need to talk about with the deed is everyone's initial deed involves a trigger for when you roll initiative. And this basically allows you to be able to get a little bit of an advantage in that first round of combat. The way of the drifter makes it so you can interact and draw a ranged weapon and then draw a one-handed melee weapon at the same time. So it's definitely one-handed weapon, one-handed gun. And your first action on your next turn, you can make a stride toward an enemy you can perceive as a free action. So you get a free movement, and you have the ability to interact to draw weapons immediately without taking any minuses. So this is a very, very useful ability.
Right.
The way the Pistolero works very similarly. You get a +2 circumstance bonus to your initiative roll, and you can interact to draw a crossbow, firearm, or one-handed melee weapon. As your first action on your next turn, you can also step up to 10 feet as a free action. So you don't get a full stride, but you also don't have to go towards an enemy, and you also only get to interact to draw one weapon, but you do get a +2 circumstance bonus on the initiative roll.
Right.
Finally, the way of the sniper is a little different.
So it's if you're rolling stealth as initiative, which totally makes sense for a sniper character, your first shot is the deadliest. You interact to draw a firearm or a crossbow. On your first turn of this encounter, the first strike you make with this weapon that hits deals an additional 1d6 precision damage, and the bonus damage increases to 2d6 at 9th and 3d6 at 15th. And there are further feats later on that really assist with this, and we can go over that later.
Yeah, so the initial deeds are really, really useful. They are free. They just trigger specifically when you roll initiative, and that's very cool. The other abilities you get at level 9 and level 15 specifically, respectively, and they help. They're fun, but there's not anything in there that I really think is, super important to go over here.
Although the rebounding assault, I think, is really fun. Because it really brings out, I think, the anime of if you're watching anime or any of that type of thing, because what it does is you throw your weapon and then you want to give it an extra push, so you shoot it so that it does more damage as it hits the target, which, I mean, it takes 2 actions. Yeah.
No, but the really important part about that is it also has the weapon come back to you if you hit.
Right.
Because that is the really fun part about that, and that's the reason why it's cool.
Right.
So the thing, and that's the deeds. The deeds are definitely a lot of fun. Now we can go into the feats, and I don't want to go over every feat by any means, but the feats, one of the main things that we like to talk about with feats is making sure that there's at least something useful to take at every level, or hopefully multiple useful things to take at every level. Right. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go over our favorite feat at each level. We have not talked about this beforehand, so we might pick the same feat. We'll see what happens.
Right.
My favorite feat at first level, in my opinion, is what makes this class kind of overpowered, in my opinion, which is Firearm Ace. Firearm Ace gives you the ability, when you are wielding a firearm and interact to reload it, your next attack gets a +2 circumstance to bonus to the damage roll on your next strike with that firearm. If the firearm is a simple firearm, increase the damage die size for that attack by 1 step.
Right. I totally agree. That is my favorite also overall, and I think although there is a reason to take sword and pistol, not at first level, definitely. Firearm Ace is by hands, but at a higher level when there is something not something reasonable to take, just because it does give you a bonus to hit with your secondary attack if you do it correctly, which is usually at a minus. So you end up, if you do it correctly, only with a -2 on your second attack instead of a -4.
It's a circumstance bonus to the damage roll, not to hit.
No, it says you successfully strike. He becomes flat-footed. The opponent becomes flat against your next melee attack. So you get a +2 to hit because he's flat-footed, and only to you.
Which you're looking at
sword and pistol.
Yeah, so you're talking about sword and pistol. Okay. Yeah, sword and pistol. Is good for that later. I thought you were still talking about Firearm Ace.
No. I'm just saying that Firearm Ace is by far the best. But at a later level, when there's not a great one to take, I see a value of sword and pistol.
All right. So at second level, I would obviously, considering that this class will include having to interact every round to reload, I would take Quick Draw. Which basically allows you to interact to draw a weapon and strike with that weapon in the same action. Although in most cases you're probably already going to be loaded, I feel like it's the best feat at level 2. Although the most fun feat is definitely Risky Reload.
Yes, I agree also that out of all of them, the best for the player is Quick Draw. Although I like the warning shot, because if you go with intimidation, it really, especially because it doesn't give you the -4 circumstance bonus for not knowing the language of the creature you're.
Yeah, that's because you're firing a gun instead, and firing a gun is a universal language.
I know. Yeah, but still, it uses your intimidation without the -4, not a bad bonus.
So for me, level 4, same concept. You would be using Running Reload, which is that you can reload and make a stride, step, or sneak in the same action.
I liked the Alchemical Shot. I thought because it gave you, for 2 actions, it gives you the opportunity to use a bomb and your shot, which adding more damage to the bomb. I think with the bonus, it really gives you a significant benefit.
Yeah, so the Alchemical Shot, what it does is you interact to retrieve a bomb and pour into your ammunition, consuming the bomb, and pour it into the ammunition. Then you strike with the weapon. And the strike that then deals damage of the same type as the bomb, fire damage if it was an alchemist fire or so on, and deals an additional d6 persistent of the same type as the bomb. So you're
and the persistent increases at higher levels.
The persistent increases. So the gunshot does normal damage, but you're dealing persistent damage, and your damage type has changed.
Right.
So it can be very cool, and even if you miss, they still take a d6 of the type of the bomb you used. But the firearm, sadly, will misfire. And misfires is definitely not a good thing. If a weapon misfires, you have to take some time to clear the gun. And there's other things about the gun rules, which, again, we will get into a little later.
Right.
Level 6 feats, I like Epistolaris Challenge. Because this is the level where you would get a feat based kind of on which way you go, as there is a feat for each of the ways, as well as a couple of feats that don't involve that.
Right. I like the reloading strike because it lets you reload and shoot the gun with one action rather than taking another two actions to reload.
Yes.
But the challenges could be really useful, especially if you're trying to control the situation and get somebody to stop killing your wizard.
Epistolaris challenge, basically, you declare a challenge against someone, you make a deception or intimidation check, and basically, if it succeeds, then you and your opponent deal bonus damage to each other for as long as that goes, and basically until either they're defeated or flees or the encounter ends. Now, the Pistolaris challenge, you have to be the way of the Pistolero, and reloading strike, you have to be the way of the Drifter, which is the main reason why, again, this is the first time you have to decide based on what your way is. At level 8, there's a couple of fun ones, but my favorite is Grit and Tenacity. Basically, you can re-roll a Fortitude or Will save with a +2 circumstance bonus. So if you basically once per hour, if you fail a Fortitude or Will save, you can re-roll it with a bonus.
Right. I felt level 8 is probably one of the few levels where every one of the feats adds some sort of value to however way you want to play the individual. There just isn't a horrible feat that you can take at this. But my favorite was the paired shot because just to avoid the resistance that creatures have to reduce that because of most likely you'll be using a pistol and it doesn't do a lot of damage, like the die roll, the die that you're using isn't high.
Right. So the thing about paired shots also, of course, is that it does give you 2 attacks while not taking a ranged penalty, a multi-attack penalty yet. They both use your current multiple attack penalty. They must both have the same target, but it's the combined shot thing that a lot of the other ranged attacks get. Paired shots is definitely good. I mainly took Grit and Tenacity because when I looked later, there's a feat that requires Grit and Tenacity that I liked.
Right.
At level 10, you got a couple of fun ones. I forget if this was the one where I really didn't care for any of them. I think this was the level I really didn't care for any of them.
Right. I like Called Shot because it gives you a little bit of an opportunity to control the situation in that you really can reduce the effectiveness of the creature you're fighting, especially if it's something that's like a key monster. Giving somebody enfeebled 2 and then enfeebled 1 if you critical for a minute is really worth it just by hitting its arm, or stupefy if you hit its head, or reduce its movement if it's or keep it bring it down if it's flying. I think is worth it when you're fighting that boss type of creature.
Called Shot is definitely a pretty good one. I personally just didn't particularly care for any of them. I would definitely think about taking Called Shot. Deflecting Shot is entertaining. I think that's the one I would have ended up taking because it's funny, which is basically an ally within the first range increment of your firearm is hit by an attack you can see. You can shoot at the attack that's coming in.
But the key issue here is you can decide to shoot after you see the roll, not before, which is a huge bonus.
You know whether the +2 will make a difference between changing it from a success to a failure or a critical success to a success, which does make it worthwhile because you're also unloading your gun for this. And it does take an action to reload, so it does kind of suck for a lot of those purposes. Level 12, I think, this is where I took True Grit, which requires Grit and Tenacity. If the reroll granted by your Grit and Tenacity is a success, you get a critical success. If the reroll is a critical failure, it becomes a regular failure instead.
That's a good bonus with that. I went with penetrating fire because it's just it's fun, and it lets you affect people who are using their minions as cover.
Yeah, penetrating fire is you shoot at a guy and then you also hit the guy behind the guy.
Yeah.
It ignores the lesser cover that would get, and you apply the damage to both of them. It's fun.
Right.
Level 14 has one of the most ridiculous feats, which I feel like it's really hard not to take Dance of Thunder just because it's funny.
Right.
So what Dance of Thunder does is your steps echo with a thunderous retort of exploding black powder as you dance a dance of death. Use any of the following actions you choose in any order. Step, strike against the target within your firearm's first range increment, and interact to reload. If you attempted a strike and it succeeded, you may repeat these 3 actions again in any order. If you attempt a strike in the second set and it succeeds, you can do it a 3rd time. So you can take a 5-foot step, shoot, reload. If you hit, you can do it again. And if you hit again, you can do it a 3rd time. When you're done with that, you become fatigued for a minute, and this takes 3 actions. So it's funny, and it's entertaining, and it can be devastating, but also it can go really poorly.
Right. And I went with, efficiency of actions. So I went with 2 weapon flurry. Yeah.
That's really what I would take too.
Yeah. Yeah.
You attack with both of your weapons.
That lets you, for 1 action, you get to attack with both your weapons, which, with somebody that needs an action to reload, I think efficiency of action really just benefits.
Yeah. Level 16, again, I think this one has a kind of obvious one, which is Fatal Bullet.
Yeah.
Since all guns have the Fatal trait, you deal an additional die of the appropriate size and damage type after doubling the weapon's damage. Right. So if we were using the basic pistol that we would be, with a dueling pistol, it's fatal. It's a D6 Fatal D10. So if you crit, even at this level, if you've got like a +2 weapon version, you would be doing 7 D10 on a critical, which does seem pretty good.
Yep.
Now the damage specifically happens after the doubling of the critical, so the additional damage does not double, but it is an extra die of that type, which is very nice.
Right. I totally agree that that's the best, but the most fun is instant return, because instant return says that if the attack against you, range attack, misses, you catch the projectile, load it, and shoot it back at the opponent. And all I picture is them shooting you with a gun, you catch it in your teeth just for flavor, load it, and shoot it back at them. Talk about anime.
Yeah, I can honestly say I agree with that. All right, and let's see, that was 16, so 18. Piercing critical is probably where I would go, but at the same time, both 18th level feats are really good. Piercing critical is you critical on a 19 instead of automatically criticking on a 20. The reason why this is good is because on your second attack for a multi-attack penalty, or your third attack, as long as you hit, your 19 will crit.
Right.
So, and because critting with guns is such an important part of their play style, it is important to have that idea. However, Unerring Shot is really, really good because it makes it so you don't take penalties. So your target does not have, if your target has cover against your attack, it does not gain the bonus to AC if it had lesser cover, and only gets lesser cover for standard cover. But more importantly, ignore penalties from range increments.
Yep.
Just ignore them. So you can go up to your 5 full range increments and just shoot normal, and there's no penalties. And since guns have very short range increments, this is especially nice.
Yeah, and I agree. Both of them are really good, but from my viewpoint, because criticaling is so important with the guns, I'd also believe critical is the better one.
Yeah, and finally at level 20, you have two choices. They are again both quite good, but I think I'd probably take Perfect Readiness. Perfect Readiness gives you permanently quickened to get an extra action each round to either step or interact to reload. So you get a free reload every round.
Right. Yeah, that's also the same one I took. Although Slinger Reflexes really might be taken depending on the type of campaign you're playing, especially if you're dealing with a lot of enemy wizards. Getting that extra reaction to them casting a spell is not a bad
remember,
thing.
extra reaction is specifically for a gunslinger reaction, so deflecting shot or grit and tenacity, but you can only use grit and tenacity once per hour, or any of the other reactions. And there's only about half a dozen reactions, so you have to have built your character to take that feat to be able to have it be useful.
Right.
So that is the general idea and gist behind the gunslinger. Obviously, you've got a couple of really cool things going for you. Your defense is okay. Your damage is solid, especially if you critical. There's ways to be able to give yourself bonuses to hit. There's bunches of ways to give yourself bonuses to damage. So there's lots of ways that you can go ahead and work with that depending on what your goal is. Now, obviously, since it's still a ranged attack, you're not going to get as many bonuses to damage as you would with a melee attack, but you also don't have to be in melee, and that's a big plus.
Right. The interesting thing, though, that it is one of the classes that does get legendary and weapon, and it gives you sort of an opportunity if you want to use one of the weapon group that are ancestry related, because most of those state that if you get whatever you get in one of your weapon groups level, that's what you can have with your ancestry weapon. So which means that you can use one of your ancestry weapons at a legendary skill set.
Only it is specific to ranged to guns and crossbows, so it would have to still fit into that category for it to work.
Let's take a look.
Either way, this is a playtest. This is a playtest, so they'll probably clean up the language a little bit.
Right.
So the other thing we kind of have to go into when talking about this is the Firearm Rules, which, thinking about it, I kind of want to be a separate video because it's going to take a little while to do. But let's just go over the basics. The basic rules for firearms are that all of them are fatal, or except for a blunderbuss, but all of the ones that are currently available are fatal. All of them increase the die type twice when they become fatal. So D4s turn to D8, D6s turn to D10, D8 turns to D12.
Right.
All of them have a reload value of 1, which means that you have to take an action to reload, just like you would with a crossbow. And the other thing is that all of them have a misfire rule. So the way the Misfire Rule works, and it's actually described earlier in the Gunslinger table, is that if you have not carefully taken care of your weapons, if you fire a firearm that was used the previous day but has not been cleaned, you have to make a DC 5 flat check before you make your attack roll. If you misfire, the weapon misfires and jams. The attack becomes a critical failure, and you must use an interact action to clear the jam before you can reload and fire the weapon again. Once you've spent at least an hour cleaning and maintaining a weapon, you do not need to roll for the misfire until the next day, so on and so forth. So that's kind of cool with the way they've set that up. So you have a misfire table, but only if you don't take the hour to clean it. Otherwise, you don't have to worry about a misfire like you've had to in other editions for when you just roll a 1 or a 2. They are, almost all of them are versatile, so you can either do piercing or bludgeoning, which is, again, kind of useful for a lot of this stuff. And again, instead of having it be a higher critical multiplier, they just made the critical dice much higher for all of the firearms.
Right.
So that's the firearm rules. Now, they only put in a few firearms, and the highest level firearm they put in were basic dueling pistols, which when I think of dueling pistols, I think of, people dueling in the 18th and early 19th century. So we're not even getting up to cowboys with a level of technology here. We're looking at flintlock pistols and like the dueling stuff, and that's as high as we go. So we're not even getting up to like shotguns and true revolvers.
Right. So I think the rules are very basic and standardized. Definitely crafting an important skill set that you have to increase with this class. For A, to fix your guns, B, to be able to get you, gunpowder, so you don't have to spend the cost, to reduce the overall cost of constantly spending for bullets.
They do come with crafting as one of their starting skills.
Right.
The skills are trained in crafting, trained in one skill based on your way, and then 3+ intelligence modifier.
Right.
So again, it's definitely not bad. This class is definitely a fun one to try out. It'd be interesting to see how much real damage output it has. Because of the legendary attack, it does at least have a chance of being able to get those criticals in. But again, if you're playing against things that are your level or a little higher than your level, the chances of critting are still going to be next to nothing most of the time anyway. So it's definitely a fun-looking class, but the damage output might not be as high as you think it should be.
And I think a lot of its Feats does give it sort of more of a supportive class than the primary damage dealer. I mean, you could definitely make it as a primary damage dealer, not the highest primary damage dealer out there, but it's more of a supportive class, I think, in the way it's positioned and with its feet.
Yeah, I think that's about that sums it up pretty well. So we're going to do the Inventor at some point relatively soon, but not just yet. Let us know your thoughts. Please, if you like this video, like it. If you don't like it, let us know why. Subscribe, all that jazz, and yeah.
Well, the Boris, thank you.
I'm Jonathan, and thanks. We'll see you guys next time.